Good morning, fourth grade. In case you don't recognize my voice, this is Mrs. Wood. I am going to be doing a lesson with everybody today, reviewing main idea. We are going to look at 4 passages today and talk about how to find the main idea. Let's look at this first passage together. It says, deciding to plant a garden is a very big undertaking. First of all, you must find out which types of plants are best suited to grow in your climate. Second, you must prepare the ground and make sure no wild animals can get to your garden and damage it. Third, it is important to carefully plant the seeds or flowers and water them just the right amount. Finally, you must make sure your garden gets just the right amount of sun to keep your plants and flowers alive. Planting a garden can be a complicated job. So, as we think about what the main idea is, the first question we want to ask ourselves is this narrative like a story with a character and a problem and maybe even a solution? Or is this expository, like an informational piece that tells us about a who or a what, maybe a why? As I look at this, I'm seeing a garden, but it's not really a story. A garden can't be a character. I think this is more expository, giving me information about a garden. I'm going to show you guys. You probably have an anchor chart kind of like this in your classroom. If you're one of my students, we have this very anchor chart on the wall. And we ask ourselves in a passage that we read, what is the story or the article mostly about? And I'm seeing this as an article, not a story. So I'm thinking about who does what and why. And as I look at this, I can look for a title, but this passage doesn't have a title. I can examine the first and last sentence when we're about to do that. I can look for repeated key words, and I can ask myself, what is the main topic? So let's go back and look at our passage, boys and girls. Do you see any repeated words? I'm noticing I see the word garden quite a few times. Garden, here's your garden. Down here at the end, I see planting a garden. Now let's read the first and the last sentence. Deciding to plant a garden is a very big undertaking. Okay, a big undertaking. I know that means I'm doing something that is going to be kind of complicated, that has a lot of steps, that is going to be maybe a little bit of a challenge. Now, let's read the last sentence. Planting a garden can be a complicated job. Ooh, I think big undertaking and complicated job kind of sound similar. It's almost like some repeated words there. A complicated job and a big undertaking really are the same. So I'm kind of thinking the main idea has something to do with, planting a garden, and that's an awful lot. So let's look at our sentences. Boys and girls, when you're finding main idea, you're usually almost always going to go back and read the passage again, kind of like we're annotating, just doing a quick annotation. Let's see what it says. You need to find out which types of plants are best suited to grow. You have to prepare the ground. You have to make sure no wild animals can get to your garden. You have to plant the seeds and flowers. This is complicated. And make sure your garden gets the right amount of sun. I think I'm kind of starting to see what the main idea is. So on the next screen, the video is going to pause and you are going to choose from 3 choices. What do you think the main idea of this passage is? All right, boys and girls, if you chose that the main idea of this passage is that planting a garden is a lot of hard work, you picked the correct answer. We can see that as they tell us all the steps of preparing a garden. That sounded like a lot. And I could also see it from my first and last sentence. All right, let's go to the next passage that we're going to look at today. Let me read it to you. It says, Macy merrily skipped down the long row of rides. This was her first trip to the carnival, and she was in awe of the sights, sounds, and food. There were so many rides with flashing lights, the games with the workers yelling, "Step right up," and the rows and rows of deliciously fried foods to eat. Her eyes grew big as she saw a man on stilts walking toward her. She nearly dropped her ice cream cone when she saw the Ferris wheel stop, leaving people laughing and happily screaming at the very top. Macy wondered what she would see next. So, boys and girls, I want you to think, is this a narrative, like a story with a character? Or is this informational, expository? Go ahead and answer the question and tell me which one you think it is. Okay, if you chose narrative, you were correct. This is a story about a character named Macy. Now, you might have gotten confused because there's not really a problem and a solution. This is more of a personal narrative about an experience that Macy had at a carnival. Okay, so as we think about the main idea, let's go back and look at our anchor chart. And we're going to look over here where we see a character has a problem and finds a solution. We're going to think about this one more like a character has an experience. So let's go back and look at Macy's experience before we choose our main idea. So I see Macy here skipping down the long row of rides. There's sights, sounds, food. This kind of reminds me of our writing where we're trying to really describe what we see and smell and hear. She hears the workers yelling, "Step right up." She sees flashing lights, deliciously fried foods. I can really picture what's going on here. I feel like I'm at the carnival. This is good writing. There's a man walking towards her on stilts. She has an ice cream cone and she almost dropped it. So, there's a lot of things going on here at this carnival, at this experience. What do you think the main idea of this passage would be? Look at the three choices and choose which one you think is the main idea. All right, boys and girls, hopefully you chose the one that said Macy was in awe of the many sights, sounds, and foods at the carnival. Some of the other choices were just little details, like she nearly dropped her ice cream cone. That's not what the entire passage is about. That was just one little detail. The other choice you could have picked was that she saw and smelled deliciously fried foods to eat. And again, that was an important part of her experience, but it wasn't what the passage was mostly about. All right, we're going to look at another passage next. All right, this one says, Beth tapped on the window next to her front door. She kept her hands around her eyes and tried to peer inside to get someone's attention. All she could see were her house keys sitting right where she had left them on the kitchen counter. Nobody came to the door, so she checked to see if the back door was unlocked. No luck. Her fingers were getting cold and she was starting to shiver. This sounds like a problem, you guys. She took her backpack off and tried climbing up to the lowest window, but she couldn't reach it. She was sure she would be stuck outside for hours. Boys and girls, it pops into my head right away. This is a narrative. I've got a character here, Beth, and she has got a problem. Now, we don't see her problem get solved, do we? But we do see that she has a problem. So I know that this is a narrative. I'm not getting information. I am just being told about this problem that Beth has. Okay, so when I think about narrative, I want to think about the character and what they're going through. So I see she's tapping on the window. She's looking inside the door. She can see her keys. Oh, I bet that's so frustrating. And nobody is home. She's getting cold, and we don't see a solution. It just ends with she was sure she would be stuck outside for hours. Ugh. So I think my main idea is probably going to be a description of Beth's problem. Not a little detail, but a description of just overall what her problem was. So the question's about to pop up, and I want you to look carefully at each one and choose the one that describes not just a little detail, but what's the main idea? What is Beth mostly going through in this passage? All right, boys and girls, hopefully you chose the one that said Beth forgot her keys and was locked out. That tells us what it was mostly about. We're going to look at one more, boys and girls, and on this one, you're going to actually type a sentence telling me the main idea. So let's take a look. At some point, most children experiment with at least one type of sport. There are different types of sports, like team sports or individual sports. There are seasonal sports and year round sports. There are sports with balls and baskets and nets. And there are sports where you use nothing but your own body. There are variations of sports like sprints and cross country and running, or the different strokes in swimming. There are so many different types of sports to try. Boys and girls, let's ask ourselves first, is this narrative? Is it a story with a problem and a solution? Or is this expository? Is it giving me information? What do you think? Choose on the next slide. All right, I bet everybody picked expository. I don't see any characters here, but I do see a repeated word. Do you remember with main idea, we looked for repeated words? Hopefully, the word that you noticed was repeated is sport. Look here, sport, sports, sport, sports, 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 sports. It's everywhere. I bet if we counted them, it would be more than 10 times. All right, so that's what we look for with expository repeated words. We also read the first and last sentence. At some point, most children experiment with at least one type of sport. And I know when they say experiment, that means they just try out different types of sports. Now let's read our last sentence. There's so many different types of sports to try. Ooh, types of sports. And I see it again here, type of sport. So let's go through our article again, because we know with main idea, we examine the passage. It's always a good idea, guys, to give it one just good, quick reading, and then go back and look at it carefully. So there are different types of sports, team sports, individual. There are seasonal sports, year-round sports. There are sports that have lots of equipment, sports that use your body, like running. Oh, and swimming. So, gosh, again, I'm seeing different types of sports that they're telling me about. That gives me a big clue about what the main idea is. On the next question, they're going to ask you to type a main idea sentence. Now, boys and girls, don't just write sports. That's not a complete sentence. Write a main idea sentence, a sentence that has a subject and a predicate, telling what the main idea is. And remember, you can't just take a sentence out of the passage and use it as your own. That'd be like stealing somebody's words. Take what you see, what you think the passage is mostly about, and put it in your own words. All right. Hopefully you chose a sentence something like this. There's a variety of sports to play. Or you could have maybe said, children can try lots of different sports, or there are many sports we can try. Something like that would be the main idea of this passage. So, boys and girls, I hope looking at these expository and narrative passages has helped you today just to get a little more practice with main idea. When you're done with this Edpuzzle video, you're going to go on to Seesaw and you're going to complete a short assignment where you're going to read a couple of passages just like this, and you're going to type out a sentence, a complete sentence telling what you think the main idea is.